Hey folks, let's catch up on what we've all been doing. I'm working in sales at Citibank now. Citibank is one of the top 3 megabanks in the US. Everyone knows it. What's more, the corporate banking division that Jake works for is a prestigious department within the bank. Wow, that's the fast track to success, isn't it? Voices of admiration can be heard from the group. Jake, the elite classmate, continues to brag about his dealings with clients, while everyone gazes at him with envious eyes. I've been wanting to get out of here for a while now, but Jake's got his arm firmly around my shoulder, so I cannot escape. Then, Jake leans in close to my face and says, "Are you surprised to hear the name of my company? Must be out of your league, Mr. Junior High School graduate." He probably wanted to see me despair about my life and look at him with envy. I could only stare back at Jake, my face expressionless. But after a while, there was a sudden commotion at the entrance to the venue. I try to gauge the situation, hoping for a chance to slip out. What's going on? As Jake turns around, there stands Sarah, known as the class beauty. "Charlie," Sarah calls out to me. "Are you leaving? I just got here." "I came because I wanted to chat with you, Charlie." "Hey Sarah, what do you want with a loser like Charlie?" Jake butts in between Sarah and me. "Are you still talking like that?" Sarah says to Jake, not bothering to hide her displeasure. "Like what?" "All that stuff about him being a dropout. It's the truth, isn't it? Forget about Charlie. Let's go grab a drink over there." Jake will not back down and even tries to forcibly lead Sarah away by grabbing her arm. Sarah shakes off Jake's arm and says, "Don't you know how much he makes a year? My name is Charlie Woods. I'm turning 38 this year. My mom told me when I was a kid that it snowed a lot on the day I was born, which was rare for the city. Like many kids, I loved snow. I have a memory from a snowy day. I think it was early January, right after New Year's. School was still out for winter break, and I was bored out of my mind. My mom had gone to work, so I was home alone. As I was staring out the window absent-mindedly, I spotted a boy at the entrance of the apartment building where I lived with my mom. He looked a bit older than me. I could not see his face clearly, but he probably was not anyone I knew. The boy was wearing a nice warm-looking blue coat. He was breathing out white puffs, seeming to search for someone. When our eyes met as I peeked out the window, he made a face like, "Oh shoot," and hid behind the building. But from the second floor where I was, I could still see him plain as day. I threw on a jacket and dashed out of the house, quietly approached the boy and called out to him. "What are you doing?" The boy jumped back in surprise, going, "Whoa. Hey, what are you doing? Are you from around here? Which school do you go to?" The boy doesn't answer my questions, just looks at me with cautious eyes. "Hey, what's your name? What do they call you?" After looking around nervously, the boy gruffly says, "You tell me your name first." "Me? I'm Charlie Woods. I'm in 2nd grade at the elementary school behind here." The boy's expression suddenly changes, and he mutters, "Charlie Woods," under his breath. "Hey, what's your name?" "Lucas." The moment the boy says this, I notice snow starting to fall gently from the sky. It's snowing. When I shout, Lucas also looks up at the sky. While catching snowflakes in his palm, Lucas answers somewhat absent-mindedly, "I see. Lucas. Lucas, who I met on a snowy day. What's with you? You talk a lot for a younger kid." His cautious look from earlier has softened a bit. Feeling happy, I continue talking. "My mom's not home right now, so I'm bored. Want to play together?" "Why isn't your mom home?" "Work. She's usually not around. I've been raised by a single mom, and I've never known my dad. My mom's always busy with work and comes home late." You're lucky. No one nagging at you." "Really? That's the first time someone said I'm lucky. Adults always say it's sad that I'm alone. I think it can't be helped because of work, but adults around me look at me with sad eyes. I don't like those eyes. It's good that you can do what you want. At my house, there's always some adult around, and it's annoying." "I see. But then you're not lonely, right? It's not like just anyone will do." There's no one I really want around. Feeling hesitant to ask more, I look up at the sky again. Is that how it is? That's how it is, Lucas said with a slightly mature look on his face. After that, Lucas came to play occasionally. He always appeared sneakily, worried about being seen by others. He told me, "Don't tell anyone about me." So I kept quiet, even to my mom. A few years passed, and when I reached the age Lucas was when we met, he suddenly stopped coming around. I couldn't contact him because I didn't know how to reach him. When I asked the neighborhood kids, no one had heard of anyone named Lucas. I wondered if he might have been a ghost or something, but I could never forget about Lucas. This is my memory of that snowy day. When I was in elementary school, I only got those sad looks, but things changed a bit when I entered middle school. My mom was still busy working, but our financial situation didn't improve much. I also helped out with a paper route job, but it was just a drop in the bucket. It was well known in my class that the Woods family was poor. It was clear that someone from my elementary school had spread the word, but I couldn't deny it because it was true. Among them, a guy named Jake often teased me about it. I tried not to let it bother me, but when one person started, others would join in. When I wrote employment on my career survey in 9th grade, Jake, who had somehow gotten that information, said loudly enough for the whole class to hear, "Hey Charlie, I hear you're getting a job after middle school. Isn't that crazy?" The classroom suddenly became noisy after Jake's words. Are there still people like that these days? That's sad. His life is over. Amid the heartless comments flying around, all I could do was hang my head. I didn't dislike studying, and my grades weren't bad. My mom encouraged me to continue my education, but I knew she hadn't been feeling well lately. I couldn't choose to continue schooling and make my mom work even harder. As I stood up to leave the uncomfortable classroom, someone said, "Boring. People who judge others' lives are the ones who are finished." The classroom fell silent at those words. The voice belonged to Sarah, known as the prettiest girl in our grade. Sarah was beautiful, but perhaps due to her strong personality, she was often alone. I didn't know her beyond being in the same class, but I thought she must be an amazing person to speak up in this atmosphere. After that, Jake and the others moved on to different topics, and I quietly left the classroom, but I still remembered that day clearly even as an adult. I never contacted Sarah after graduating from middle school, but I always thought if I met her again, I'd like to thank her. It was last month when I received an invitation to a class reunion. Although I didn't have many good memories from middle school, fortunately, my circumstances have changed since then. I thought I might be able to attend now. Honestly, I was dreading meeting Jake and the others, but with a faint hope of seeing Sarah, I decided to attend. I was a bit nervous from the morning of that day. Even though my situation had changed, remembering that uncomfortable classroom made me feel a bit gloomy. Trying to reassure myself that everyone must be adults now, I entered the venue. It was a small French restaurant, apparently rented out for the day. As soon as I entered the floor, I heard a loud laugh. Hearing that distinctive laugh, memories from the past came flooding back. The voice belonged to Jake, who had mocked and teased me many times. I was surprised at how my body froze up. It felt like my heart had gone back to middle school. Maybe coming here today was a mistake after all. I thought about heading back to the restaurant entrance. At that moment, "Hey, is that you, Charlie?" All eyes in the venue turned to me at those words. As I stood frozen, Jake approached me with large strides. "It really is you, Charlie. It's been ages." Jake says this with a smile, but his expression hasn't changed from back then. I could barely manage a small, "It's been a while." "Hey, everyone. The junior high school grad Charlie is here. How's life at the bottom treating you?" Jake turned to everyone and said loudly. At these malicious words, I couldn't move. Even though I'm different now from who I was then, I couldn't find my voice. Laughter erupted from various corners at Jake's words. It was just like being back in the middle school classroom. I thought surely everyone would have grown up after all these years, but it seems people don't change so easily. By the way, didn't you move away a little while after graduating middle school? Since we went to the same school, news about the neighborhood spread even if you weren't close to someone. I hadn't kept in touch with any classmates since graduating, but I guess the neighbors had noticed when I moved. Oh yeah, my mom passed away. Jake's face showed obvious surprise at my words. Your mom died? Wasn't your mom always wearing shabby clothes and looking tired? Hearing him badmouth my mother, I glared at Jake without thinking. What's your problem? It's the truth, isn't it? Your family didn't have a father. Your mother worked herself to the bone for you, right? I'm just showing some sympathy here. He says this, but there's a smirk plastered on his face. The reason my mother worked so hard was because of the debt my father left behind, and she ruined her health trying to put me through school. My mother did nothing wrong. Even after her health failed, she always put me first. She regretted that I gave up on going to high school, blaming herself. Even right before she passed away, she blamed herself for leaving me alone, calling it her own incompetence. And apologizing to me over and over, my mother took her last breath. My prayer for her to stop apologizing and just live never reached her. Even now, thinking about my mother makes my chest tighten. But as if he couldn't care less about my feelings, Jake said, "Let's end this boring talk. Everyone, let's catch up on what we've all been doing. I'm working in sales at Citibank now. Citibank is one of the top 3 megabanks in the US. Everyone knows it. I'm in the corporate banking division now, handling major corporations. The other day, the CEO of East House took me to this amazing sushi place. East House is a famous furniture manufacturer in the US. The corporate banking division that Jake works for is a prestigious department within the bank. Wow, that's the fast track to success, isn't it?" Voices of admiration can be heard from the group. Jake continues to brag about his dealings with clients, while everyone gazes at him with envious eyes. I've been wanting to get out of here for a while now, but Jake's got his arm firmly around my shoulder, so I can't escape. Then, Jake leans in close to my face and says, "Are you surprised to hear the name of my company? Must be out of your league, Mr. Junior High School grad." He probably wanted to see me despair about my life and look at him with envy. But I only stare back at Jake, my face expressionless. "So what about you?" Just as Jake says this in a bouncy voice, he turns around saying, "What's up?" And there stands a tall, stylish woman. The woman is wearing makeup that suits her clear-cut features well, dressed in a chic black dress. Her accessories aren't overstated, creating an elegant overall look. I recognize Sarah immediately. Her overwhelming aura and strong-willed gaze remained the same as before, but she had become a mature woman. Jake, realizing it was Sarah, muttered softly. Sarah. She was known for her beauty since childhood, but her looks had only improved with age, captivating everyone's attention. Seeing an opportunity as Jake's grip loosened at Sarah's appearance, I tried to head for the exit to leave the venue. Although I haven't spoken with Sarah yet, I didn't want to be Jake's target anymore. The moment I turn my back to Jake, I make eye contact with Sarah standing next to him. Although we hadn't met since graduating middle school, I felt like I'd seen her somewhere before. However, while everyone is looking at Sarah, I want to leave this place. Just as I reluctantly look away from Sarah, "Charlie," Sarah calls out to me. I stop in my tracks. "Are you leaving? I just got here." "I came because I wanted to chat with you, Charlie." "Me?" Surprised by her unexpected words, I turned back. "Charlie, at your company." "Hey Sarah, where do you work?" "I'm in sales at Citibank." Jake cuts in between Sarah and me. Of course, he doesn't forget to brag about himself. "Oh, is that so? Anyway, Charlie." Sarah leans forward to talk to me, seemingly uninterested in Jake, who's blocking her view of me. Jake, apparently displeased by her attitude, turns to me with an annoyed look. "I was just about to leave." "What? Why?" "Then I'll leave too." "Why?" I'm surprised, not understanding Sarah's actions. Of course, I wanted to talk to Sarah, but I thought she wouldn't have any business with me. "Hey Sarah, what do you want with a loser like Charlie?" As frustrating as it is, Jake voices my thoughts, trying to stop Sarah. Are you still talking like that? Sarah says to Jake, not bothering to hide her displeasure. Like what? All that stuff about him being a dropout. It's the truth, isn't it? Forget about Charlie. Let's go grab a drink over there. Jake won't back down and even tries to forcibly lead Sarah away by grabbing her arm. Hey, bottom feeder Charlie. Learn your lesson and don't show your face around us again. You're poor, so don't waste money in a place like this. Unless you want me to pick on you some more. Just as Jake says this to me with a laugh, Sarah shakes off his arm. Don't you know how much he makes a year? Sarah says to Jake, frowning with displeasure. Huh, Jake snorts. As if to say, who cares about the income of a loser? Charlie, you're also at fault here. Why don't you tell Jake properly when he calls you a dropout or loser? You're the future CEO, aren't you? Sarah's words cause a stir of surprise throughout the venue, but Jake seems the most shocked of all. What are you talking about, Sarah? There's a limit to jokes. As if this guy could be the future CEO. Have you heard of Ocean's Hotels and Resorts? Sarah says clearly to the flustered Jake. It's a major hotel chain that operates some of the country's leading business and resort hotels. That's a big hotel chain, right? They're one of my clients. What? Sarah, do you work there? Jake asks Sarah with a dubious look. Yes. I'm in the planning department, but Charlie is currently the executive vice CEO. What? This time, I'm the one surprised by Sarah's words. I had no idea Sarah was working at the same company as me. As she said, I'm currently at the headquarters of a major hotel chain. Ocean's Hotels and Resorts is a top 3 company in the hotel industry, managing over 300 business hotels and 100 resort hotels nationwide. Sarah, you're in the planning department? That's right. We've passed each other at the office, but you never noticed, did you? I only ever see you with important people, so it's hard to approach you, Sarah says, looking a bit angry. Maybe she had been trying to talk to me. Since the planning department is also at the headquarters, it wouldn't be strange for us to pass each other in the company cafeteria or elsewhere. Just like when she entered this venue, Sarah stands out wherever she goes. No matter how busy I am with work, I can't believe how oblivious I've been. I'm sorry, I didn't notice at all. You should have called out to me. I told you, I can't just casually call out when you're walking with the CEO and other executives. Sarah still looks angry. It's true that when we executives are around, other employees tend to keep their distance out of respect. I see, I'm sorry. I should have noticed. You really should have. Sarah seems to accept my apology, adding, well, it's fine since we can talk now. It's an embarrassing outcome. I came to this reunion wanting to see Sarah, only to find out we've been working at the same company every day. If I had noticed earlier, I could have avoided this unpleasant encounter with Jake. Hold on a minute, you two. Jake, who's been left out of the conversation, cuts in hastily. What do you mean he's an executive vice CEO? Didn't you get a job right after middle school? I did. I worked at a local factory. But then my mom passed away. It's true that I got a job at a local factory right after graduating from middle school. A few years later, when my mother passed away and I had lost the will to live, something unexpected happened. From that point on, my life changed into something completely different from before. Faced with the loss of my mother, I, still in my teens, didn't know what to do and spent my days in a daze. It was almost after a month of my mother's death. The doorbell of my house, which rarely had visitors, rang. When I opened the door, there stood a man in a well-tailored suit. He said he was an old acquaintance of my mother's who had heard about her passing and came to pay his respects. However, I had never heard my mother talk about old acquaintances. This was because my mother had always extremely avoided talking about her past. Her childhood home, the place where she spent her early years. Whenever I tried to ask about such things, my mother would smile awkwardly and say, "I've thrown it all away," never telling me anything. The only thing she barely talked about was my father. She said he was a kind person, even though all he left for this family was debt. It was strange even to my child's mind how she didn't seem to resent the husband who had disappeared, leaving her and their son behind. When my mother talked to me about my father, it was always about happy memories. The delicious diner he took her to when they first came to this town. The movie theater they went to together. The sunset they saw while walking along the riverbank. The awning of a clothing store where they took shelter from the rain. I remember her telling these stories to me as a child, as if they were irreplaceable memories. Would such a mother have old acquaintances coming to inquire about her, especially at a time like this? In fact, I had only informed my mother's longtime workplace about her passing. Perhaps sensing my distrust, the man held out an unusually thick condolence envelope and said, "There's someone who wants to meet you." That someone turned out to be a person claiming to be my grandfather. In other words, my mother's father. The man was a servant working at my grandfather's house and had come here today on my grandfather's orders. Although I was half in doubt, I decided to follow the man to my grandfather's house as he instructed. The place we arrived at was in a nature-rich area, a bit far from the town where I lived. The car carrying me entered what looked like a large garden and stopped after a while. A vast garden so large I couldn't tell where the property ended, and a large single-story house. As I stood there dumbfounded, the entrance door flew open and an old man rushed out. When he saw me, he came towards me with a contorted face as if he couldn't hold back anymore. Someone shouted, "Master," from behind. The old man clung to my arm and said in a strained voice, "Linda." Linda was my mother's name. She passed away. When I said this, the old man collapsed to the ground, crying loudly, like a child. I had never seen an adult cry like this before. As I patted the old man's back, not knowing what to do, he muttered, "I'm sorry, it's my fault," and cried again. This old man was my mother's father, my grandfather. After he finally calmed down, I heard various stories from my grandfather. My mother was born in this house. Growing up without any wants, my mother became a gentle and kind daughter. Grandfather said she had quiet eyes like a calm sea. This house had been wealthy for generations, and my mother was the only child. When she came of age, she was expected to marry someone who would become the heir. For his daughter's happiness, Grandfather worked hard to find a good match. He found the second son of another wealthy family. Fortunately, my mother liked him too, and they got married. After a while, they had a child. It was a boy. Just when they thought the Woods family was smooth sailing, the son-in-law ran off with another woman. The woman was a helper in this house. Of course, my mother knew her too. They left a note and walked out hand in hand. We don't know what happened to them after that. Mom was very shocked, but she had to raise her newborn child, and she had nowhere else to go. Grandfather strictly told Mom, "This child will eventually inherit this house, so raise him well," and she often became depressed dealing with unfamiliar childcare and her missing husband. One day, a gardener who had been tending the Woods family garden for years came with his apprentice. The apprentice was close to Mom's age, and Mom apparently had casual conversations with him while holding her young son. Dad and Mom gradually became attracted to each other, and Dad said to Mom, "Why don't you leave here and come with me?" Dad apparently had no intention of becoming the Woods family's son-in-law. After thinking about it, Mom decided to leave the house with her young son. On a quiet night, as Mom was quietly preparing to head to her meeting place with Dad, Grandfather stopped her. Grandfather said this was the only time Mom didn't listen to him. The daughter, who had always been obedient and had calm eyes since childhood, directed her anger at her father for the first time, saying she wanted to leave this house. Grandfather regrets not granting his daughter's first ever request at that time. However, at that time, Grandfather feared nothing more than the family falling apart in his generation. Grandfather said if she was going to leave, she should leave her son behind. Of course, Mom refused, saying she couldn't do such a thing. The young son woke up and started crying at the sound of Grandfather and Mom arguing. Mom panicked as she sensed the household stirring. Seeing his chance, Grandfather snatched the son from Mom. The crying grew louder, Faced with a big decision, Mom glanced at Grandfather, then turned her back and ran away. That's how Mom left this house. Mom left this wealthy house and chose a life of nothing with Dad. Then, I was born to them. Holding young me, she must have remembered the son she left behind. However, I guess karma got us, Grandfather said quietly. Lucas is gone too. Lucas? At the sound of Lucas, I gasped. A boy searching for someone. A beautiful blue coat. Lonely eyes when he said there was no one he really wanted around. The events of that snowy day vividly come back to my memory. Lucas. I might know him? No way you would know him. Then, a photo. Do you have one where I can see his face? Grandfather looked a bit surprised at my sudden outburst, but he pointed to the wall and said, Face? If it's a photo, there's one place there. There was a photo on the wall. That face was the Lucas I knew. Although he looked more grown up than when I last saw him, it was definitely the face I knew. Lucas. According to Grandfather, Lucas was my half-brother. However, Grandfather says Lucas is no longer here. Apparently, he passed away in an unfortunate accident when he was young. On that snowy day, Lucas had come to see Mom. But Mom wasn't there, and she had another son besides him, me. When he heard my name, Lucas must have realized this. He hesitated to tell his name on the spot, but if I had told Mom, she would have surely realized. However, knowing nothing, I kept Lucas's request and didn't tell Mom, and every time Lucas showed up, I begged to play together. While complaining verbally, Lucas went along with me. I wonder how Lucas felt. Did he not hate me? I liked playing with Lucas, so I was lonely when I couldn't see him anymore. Not knowing he had met with an accident, even when he stopped showing up, I always wanted to see him again. But that's no longer possible. As I struggled to sort out my emotions, Grandfather continued his story from the past. After Mom's elopement partner disappeared, Grandfather found out where Mom was and offered support. However, Mom refused. Mom raised me on her own and then passed away. Because of me, you've had to struggle too. Now that Linda is gone, you're my only blood relative. It's the same for me too. Until now, I've lived thinking I had no relatives other than Mom. I don't have much time left. I want to leave everything to you, the grandson I've finally met. What do you mean? When I'm gone, this house and all the assets will be yours. And I want to entrust you with the company too. As I stood there dumbfounded, Grandfather continued. Grandfather is currently the owner of a major hotel chain. From the apartment where I live, I can see a large building standing in front of the station, and it has the same name as that hotel. Grandfather is currently the chairman, and although someone else is the CEO, he wants me to take over eventually. You must be surprised by this sudden talk, but please accept it. I've painfully learned from Linda and Lucas's cases that it's not good to postpone things. What needs to be said should be said while one is alive. But I only graduated from middle school. How can I take over such a big company? I'm happy about Grandfather's feelings, but as a junior high school graduate, I lack the knowledge, effort, and everything needed to run a company. To begin with, I know nothing about hotels or management. Then Grandfather took my hand and said, as if to say it's all right, you're still young. It's not too late to start studying now. I'll do everything I can. I felt like I was alone in this world after Mom passed away, but I still had this house where Mom grew up, and my grandfather was there. Although I can't meet him anymore, Lucas was there too. I was surprised by Lucas's story, but I think the fact that I had met Lucas in the past played a big role in believing all of Grandfather's story. The reason I could accept the sudden appearance of Grandfather and the unbelievable content of his story so easily was because Lucas's existence connected the past me with the present me. The only regret is that I can't hear directly from Lucas, but this is something beyond my control. It's very sad when important people are gone, but I think those of us left behind must live properly for the sake of those who have passed away. And from that day, my new life began. The first thing I started was studying languages. I studied German intensively with a tutor arranged by Grandfather. and when I became somewhat capable of daily conversation, I immediately went to study abroad in Switzerland. It was a hospitality study program. Switzerland is recognized as having high-level hospitality by global standards among hotel study programs, and you can gain a wide range of knowledge. When I heard about studying in Switzerland, my biggest worry was whether I'd have to study German or French again, but I was relieved to learn that all university classes were in English. While living in dormitories with students from all over the world, I learned hospitality from scratch. By the time I returned to the US, I was over 20, and I joined my grandfather's company directly. What's all this about? Jake, who had been listening intently to my story, gradually clouded over as the story progressed, and now he's standing there looking pale, barely able to keep his composure. You're the heir to that chain? You, a junior high school grad? Technically, I'm not a dropout anymore. I graduated from a university in Switzerland. That's why I told you. He's earning an incomparable salary to yours, Sarah said to Jake in an exasperated tone. Currently, I'm the executive vice CEO, but since joining in my 20s, I've learned about overall hotel operations as a staff member and gained experience as a leader and chief manager. For the past few years, I've been overseas a lot, and until recently, I was working as a general manager at our branch in Canada. However, it seems the current CEO is considering retirement soon, so I'll probably be staying here for a while. Regarding the salary Sarah mentioned, I receive executive compensation, so it's more than the average employee of my age. Moreover, if you add up the assets like real estate inherited from my grandfather, it amounts to quite a sum. However, since I've lived trying not to use much money since childhood, honestly, I still don't quite understand how to use money. I inherited the house that my mother should have inherited, and I'm inheriting the company that Lucas should have inherited. For me, more important than money is living a life that wouldn't shame my mother and Lucas. Don't mess with me. How can such a ridiculous story be true? I don't believe it. It's up to you whether you believe it or not, but when I become CEO, I could even change our main bank. Is that okay? Jake's attitude changed dramatically at just that one statement from me. Wait. No, please wait. Because you're our account manager, right? I could let bygones be bygones from middle school, but after today, as I sighed ostentatiously, Jake turned pale and became flustered. Please, if that happens, I won't be able to stay at the company. I see, then maybe changing would be good. Charlie, Jake shouts, teary-eyed and trembling. Charlie? As I glance at Jake with cold eyes, he lets out a yelp. Mr. Woods, please. I apologize for everything up until now. I'm truly sorry. Jake collapses to his knees at my feet. The other classmates are dumbfounded at Jake's pathetic state. It's the first time we've seen Jake like this. I sigh again, audibly for Jake, and say, fine. There's still some time before I become CEO, so I'll think about it a bit more. Please, please, please. In exchange, don't show your face in front of me again. Jake responds with a trembling voice while keeping his head to the floor. And so, my long day came to an end. After that, Jake left the venue with unsteady steps, and those who had been jeering at me along with Jake also left quietly with awkward expressions. Finally able to talk leisurely with Sarah, I was able to express the gratitude I had wanted to say for so long since middle school. Sarah looked puzzled, saying, "Did I really say that?" But I was satisfied. The reunion became an opportunity for Sarah and me to start greeting each other properly at work, and we've even reached the point of going out for meals together. I secretly hope to continue this good relationship. Since then, I haven't met Jake. After exposing such a pathetic side in front of everyone there, Jake will probably never come to a reunion again. According to Sarah, whom I met in the cafeteria the other day, Jake voluntarily requested a department transfer and left his corporate sales position. If we don't meet for work, he probably won't face me ever again. Jake, who quit the big corporate account management job he was so proud of, is now rumored within the bank to have given up on the fast track to promotion and is currently at a small branch in a rural area. That day, the news said it was the coldest day of this winter. So grandfather and I wore our warmest coats and visited Mom's grave since morning. The day Mom passed away was also a cold winter like this. It was also when I was born and when I met Lucas. Mom, I'm going to become CEO. As I was saying this, grandfather, who was watching me from beside, suddenly said with an anxious face, I wonder if Linda would be happy. I wonder if she thinks I took both her sons away from her. To grandfather, who was speaking with such uncertainty, I said, I think she's happy. This wasn't just an easy word to comfort grandfather, I truly believed it. When I was in elementary school, I wrote CEO as my future dream. Grandfather looks at me with a surprised face. At that time, I wrote it thinking I wanted to become CEO, earn lots of money, and make life easy for Mom. Mom smiled happily when she saw that. When I asked Mom, what do you want if I become CEO? She pointed at the Oceans Hotels and Resorts building visible from our apartment window and said, Then will you let me stay at that hotel? I've always wondered, why did Mom want to stay at that hotel? Not luxurious restaurants or brand-name clothes, but the first thing that came out of Mom's mouth was our hotel. The large building in front of the station was clearly visible even from the small apartment where I lived. However, because I thought it had nothing to do with me at the time, it never came up in conversation. That's why I found it strange. I never paid attention to it, but I think Mom was always looking at it, remembering various things. I see, grandfather says in a quiet voice. Then, as if Mom was responding, white snow began to fall gently from the sky. It's snowing. I look up at the sky. As I watch the snow falling lightly, drifting, the faces of Mom and Lucas come to mind. I'll do my best. My softly muttered words rise to the gray sky along with my white breath. Grandfather and I stood there for a while,